Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. Now, Bone Daddy himself sent me this, and I got the sense that he really wanted me to play it. So, today we will be playing No Lands Blue-White, like Doomsday Charbelcher combo. And so the basic concept of the deck is all of our cards are non-land cards on the front face. So if I cast Selective Memory, I can exile any cards out of my deck that I want and leave only the cards I want left in my deck. This can be done in such a way that I could Selective Memory, exile my entire deck except for one card, which is Thassa's Oracle, draw it, and then play it and win the game. Or, you know, I can play Charbelcher and activate Charbelcher and win the game. And this is very difficult for my opponent to interact with when I'm playing something like Teferi. We can also get up to 7 mana relatively quickly because we're playing Lotus Bloom, which we can suspend on turn 0. And the rest of these cards are just the most useful front-facing non-land cards, back-faced land cards. So like Skyclave Cleric, it's a 2 mana 1/3 that can gain life and block if it has to, but it's mainly just a tapped plains. Same with Bayin Vale, we could shrink attacking enemy creatures, but odds are it's just a tapped island. Jwari Disruption, it's a censor that is also a tapped island. Solundi Vision, you know, you can dig 6 cards deep looking for an instant or sorcery card, or it's a tapped island. And then, of course, we have Seagate Restoration and Amaria's Call because they're untapped backface lands. Other than that, we have Artifact Ramp in the forms of Mind Stone, Talisman of Progress, and Treasure Map, as well as Lotus Bloom. A little bit of combo protection in the form of Teferi, Time Raveler, and Force of Negation, because a lot of our cards are blue. And then, of course, our win condition, Thassa's Oracle or Charbelcher. Out of the sideboard, we have some Paths to Exile for more control, along with Mystical Dispute for opposing counterspells, Timely Reinforcements if we happen to go up against Burn or Aggro, same with Leyline of Sanctity if we're going up against Heavy Hand Hate or Targeted Burn, and an Echoing Truth just to answer catch-all problematic permanents. But I think that's pretty much all you need to know about this deck. So let's go ahead and take this into a Modern League. We'll see what happens. Oops, that is not the deck I wanted to queue up with, although that is a fun deck. Alright. And without any further ado, I will see you guys in round 1. Alrighty. Round 1, here we go. I would like to play first. Well, we have Selective Memory. We're not holding Thassa's Oracle, and we've got lands and potentially counterspell, stuff to suspend, so I'm going to keep. We'll just see if we can't get them with the, I don't know, jank kind of combo that's happening here. So we're going to suspend a Lotus Bloom, play Skyclave Basilica, pass the turn. Turn 2, I think we go for Talisman of Progress, if possible. Opponent starts Flooded Strand, cracks Flooded Strand. They are a Yorion deck. Breeding Pool, so this is probably the, like, Kiki combo finish, I imagine. We get a Treasure Map. So play Seagate Reborn, untapped, and play Talisman of Progress. Pass the turn. We can actually next turn go for the Selective Memory combo with a Force Spike backup next turn, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to do it. I mean, like, we're just going to see what happens, right? My opponent is tapped out, so unless they have Force of Negation, which is possible, we should be fine here. So play Seagate Reborn, untapped, cast Selective Memory. Alright, time to exile our entire deck. Oh, this might take a while. So apologies to anyone who has to sit through this entire thing. Hopefully they can't mill us. That would be heartbreaking, you know. Yep, only about halfway there. Just exiling cards, don't mind me. Gotta find that Thassa's Oracle. I could technically put back 2 cards if I was worried. Oh, you know what? Actually, maybe I put back Teferi and Thassa's Oracle. I'm going to do that, because if I draw Teferi, I can play Teferi and then draw Thassa's Oracle. And then if I draw Thassa's Oracle, I can just cast Thassa's Oracle. Does that make more sense? Because I have a Lotus Bloom coming off suspend next turn. I actually think that's fine. We're going to exile our entire deck except for a Teferi and a Thassa's Oracle. Cool. Pass the turn. Don't thought scour me, bro. That would be my luck. It'd be like Thought Scour, and I'd be like, crap. I'm super excited. I found something to do in my spare time to leverage my programming skills, and I've ordered a Raspberry Pi 4 just to play around with as a peripheral, and I might make some fun custom smart home stuff, and just a few different things to try. Opponent paths themselves. Okay. They untap. They play a Hollowed Fountain untapped. Alright, they're going to pass the turn. This tells me that they probably have like some kind of counterspell, so hopefully we draw the Teferi. Okay, Lotus Bloom coming off Suspend. We cast it. Then we draw Teferi. Play Teferi. If they've got action, they have to respond to him. And depending on what it is, we might be able to get him with a Force Spike. They're paying 5 mana. Court of Calling X2. Oh, we're gonna get him. Jwari Isle Disruption. Force Spike! Alright, get him Teferi. Alright, let's go ahead and draw a card. Cast Thassa's Oracle. They can't respond. Oh, amazing. Oh, I'm so glad we went with the Teferi play there. That's dope. Okay, so versus Yorion, I imagine we probably want some number of Mystical Disputes. They do play blue cards, but having the... No, actually, I think having like an Echoing Truth and a couple of Path is probably where we want to be. I'll cut like an Opt and a Serum Visions, and then probably a Force of Negation, actually. It seems to me that they're going to have a lot of creature spells, and any non-creature spells they're probably casting on our turn. So Force of Negation just seems a little bit worse. But we got Ramp, we got a little bit of Dig. I mean, I guess we'll try keeping this. I'm not really sure what's a good hand versus what's not. Obviously, a hand with Selective Memory would be better. Okay, we draw another Mind Stone. We're going to start Skyclave Basilica and pass the turn. Opponent fetches up a Ketria Triome, then passes. They untap, they play a Sun Petal Grove, and they cast a Wall of Blossoms. Okay, we untap, we draw Lotus Bloom, play Emeria Shattered Skyclave, then play Talisman of Progress, so we can opt, and suspend Lotus Bloom, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Had to get comfy. Who's down there? Opponent plays an Eidolon of Rhetoric. Okay, let's go ahead and opt. Selective Memory I will put on top of my deck. That's okay, we don't have to cast more than one spell to win. We draw Mind Stone. So play Selendi Isle, play Mind Stone, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays a Scalding Tarn. I mean, there's always the chance that we just draw Charbelcher as well. Okay, opponent starts by cracking Scalding Tarn, gets a Raugrin Triome, and then plays a Sword of Fire and Ice. Presumably they're going to attack for 1. Sure. We untap, Lotus Bloom ticking down, draw an Emeria's Call. So we can Selective Memory, but next turn we won't be able to cast a spell because of Lotus Bloom coming off Suspend. If I Selective Memory, I think I would put back, like, probably a couple of Teferis and then Thassa's Oracle? I imagine that would be correct. Okay, so we have 5 mana, meaning we can play Emeria's Call tapped, play a Mind Stone. No, we can't play a Mind Stone because we needed Selective. Okay, so Emeria Shattered Skyclave, play it tapped, then we Selective Memory. And we gotta do this. Exile the whole deck again. I could actually leave Path in the pile, because we can cycle Mind Stones. We'll have enough mana. Let me think about that. So I think we're going to leave 2 Teferis, Thassa's Oracle, but do we leave a Path? We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana the turn we're going to go off. I think we do. I think we leave 1 Path, and we'll have 4 cards in the deck. It's important to note that we won't be able to play any spells next turn. So we do want some number of cards. Oh, they can equip Sword of Fire and Ice to Eidolon, so we can't unsummon it with Teferi. So it is wise that we kept the Path, because that can help protect us, unless they're just totally tapped out, in which case we'll... Okay. Opponent suits up Eidolon. Plays a Stoneforge Mystic. Tutors up a Batterskull. Gonna hit us for 3, shoot us for 2, and draw a card. Sure. Now, in response to Lotus Bloom, I could cycle Mind Stone and try and draw Path. It's a 1 in 4 chance I get it. Or in response to Lotus Bloom, I mean. I believe it's worth doing. There it is. So Path Eidolon. Because this should allow us to cast Lotus Bloom, and then we can cycle a Mind Stone, see if we can't hit a Teferi. Although I do end up with less mana in this calculation. So we draw Teferi. Play Teferi. Unsummon Stoneforge, and if I draw... I was going to say, if I draw Thassa's Oracle, I win immediately. Pass the turn. We have a Force of Negation if they cast any big, scary, non-creature spell that we can't deal with. And we have Teferi for the first spell on our turn. Opponent cycles Horizon Canopy. Opponent plays Prime Speaker Vanifar, but it's not like it has haste. They pass, we untap, we draw Thassa's Oracle. Play Thassa's Oracle? Unless they have Angel's Grace, we should win. Woo! We did it! First try! I'll see you guys in round 2. Alrighty, round 2, here we go. Alrighty, I would like to play first. Sure, we'll keep. I do have to use my only interaction as my first land play, though, so it's a little bit awkward, potentially. Let's play Jwari Ruins and suspend Lotus Bloom. Pass the turn. Opponent starts Watergrave Shock into Ruin Crab. Okay, Mill is potentially a big danger. We get a Skyclave Cleric. So let us cast Serum Visions. We draw Bayin Veil, Opt to the bottom, I think Bloom to the bottom, and I don't think we need white mana in particular, but I'll play Skyclave Basilica, pass the turn. I think this is going to depend on whether or not my opponent has a counterspell, because we're probably going to have to win with Charbelcher versus the Mill deck. There's just no guarantee that we're going to have Thassa's Oracle on the left in our deck, unless I can combo off. Nope, there it is. Alright. Okay, we get Glimpsed. We untap. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw Seagate Restoration. We'll play Bayin Coast. And if all goes well, and my opponent does not mill me for more than 16 cards, if they mill more than 16 cards, we can't kill them in one activation of Charbelcher. Alright, pass the turn. But if they don't mill that much, we can kill them in one activation of Charbelcher. Okay. So opponent mills us by playing a land. They cast Visions of Beyond to draw 3 cards. They're gonna Surgical Charbelcher. No! They're main decking Surgical, that jerk! And we don't have a way to get, what do you call it? We don't have a way to get Thassa's Oracle back from the grave. They were literally dead next turn. Yep. Alright. We have no way left to win. So, versus our opponent, we're bringing in Leyline of Sanctity, for sure. We probably need an Echoing Truth. So what are we dropping for these 5 cards? For these 5 cards, I think we dropped 2 Opt, 2 Serum Visions, and I'll say 1 Treasure Map. And we'll try it like this. Mill is going to be a very, very tough matchup for this deck, especially because of Surgical. Our win conditions are very powerful, but this hand would not be bad, but I'm going to mulligan to Leyline, I think. Also a mulligan. Okay, hang on. Did I mulligan to 5 or did I mulligan to 4? Let me see really quick. Okay, I mulligan to 5. I put back 2 cards in this hand. So this hand I can actually keep because I'm holding Thassa's Oracle, unless my opponent has a Thoughtseize, which I think I'm going to risk. So I have to put back 2 cards. One of them is Treasure Map, and the other I think is Celundi Vision. So we start Suspend Lotus Bloom, Jwari Ruins, pass the turn. Opponent plays Darkslick Shores into a Soul Guide Lantern. We don't use the grave, do we? No, we don't use the grave. I don't know why they would be playing that unless they just had stuff that was bad against us and had to sideboard. We draw a Leyline of Sanctity. Okay, play Emeria, Shattered Skyclave. We will not pay 3 life. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. I mean, we'd lose to Thoughtseize and potentially lose to, like a Drown in the Lock counter mode. Alright, we get Mesmeric Orbed. We mill Emeria. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw to Fairy. Alright, pass the turn. We really just need to draw like another land. Opponent mills Soul Guide Lantern and Glimpse the Unthinkable. If we can cast Leyline of Sanctity at any point without using Lotus Bloom mana, that would be ideal. Okay, we untap Lotus Bloom, coming off Suspend. Alright, we draw Serum Visions. Cast Serum Visions. We get another Selective Memory. Hang on. Oh, I can't do it in any other order. Top. Pass the turn. I should have put them back in the other order because if my opponent doesn't cast a mill spell, I want to draw the land, not mill it to Jwari Isle Disruption untapping, or Jwari Isle, or Jwari Ruins. Opponent plays an Obero. They glimpse the Unthinkable, milling us for 10, so we don't have to worry about drawing any of those cards. Opponent Surgical's Charbelcher. They're going to see what we're holding. So they're going to have to try and find / hold up a counter for Thassa's Oracle. And we're going to try and stop them from doing that by playing to Fairy, basically. That's the plan. So we want to be drawing lands and mana rocks basically from here on out. Actually, if I just draw an untapped land next turn, I could potentially Selective Memory myself, exile my entire deck, and cast Thassa's Oracle. And unless they have Mystical Dispute or Spell Snare, we would win. Okay, we untap, we mill, and opt. We draw Skyclave Cleric. Play Skyclave Basilica. Pass the turn. If we don't draw an untapped land, I'll just try and play to Fairy. Opponent untaps Mills Island Field of Ruin. Opponent plays a Ruin Crab. They're going to pick up Obero, replay it. They mill us for 3. We untap, mill 1, draw Mind Stone, play to Fairy. So, presumably opponent has to counter this. Yep. Okay. Pass the turn. And I think next turn we just gotta go for it. Opponent untaps, they mill 3. They're milling Archive Trap, Flooded Strand, and Surgical. They play a Swamp, mill us for 3. They have 2 cards left in their hand. If they cycle Soul Guide Lantern, they don't currently have an answer. And I'm not sure what the odds are exactly. We draw a Talisman. I don't think we get anything by waiting. The odds that we die to mill is pretty high. And I could play out my mana rocks first and maybe play around a Mystical Dispute. But, like, there's a really good chance we just die. Mind Funeral would kill us instantaneously. I don't know if they're playing Mind Funeral. But I think we're just going to go for it. This might cause us to lose. Opponent is thinking. Alright, let's go ahead and exile, I guess, the rest of our deck. There's no card we would want to keep. I guess we would want to draw a Force of Negation if possible. No, that wouldn't make a difference, actually. So, exile our whole deck. And then we ask our opponent, do you have a counterspell? And the answer appears to be yes. Alright, you win. Yeah, Mill seems like it's a very tough matchup for this deck, and I did not keep a hand with Leyline of Sanctity. I kept a hand that could potentially have just won with Thassa's Oracle, because I can't Surgical it, but... Alright, I'll see you guys in round 3. Alrighty, round 3, let's, we'll choose to play first. Well, we have Charbelcher, a couple of cantrips, but not enough lands, so we gotta mulligan that. This one, I think, can work. We can at least play it to Fairy early. And by early, I mean on time. I'm going to keep this and put back a Talisman, I think. Alright, so we're going to start with Seagate Reborn tapped and suspend Lotus Bloom. Pass the turn. We do have to bolt ourselves to play Talisman on curve. So Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw another Lotus Bloom. Play Emeria Shattered Skyclave, pay 3 life. Play Talisman and suspend Lotus Bloom. Pass the turn. Opponent started Rimewood Falls, so there's some kind of snow deck with Yorion. If they play a creature, we just unsummon it with Teferi. If they don't, we probably are running Teferi into a counterspell. So they fetch and shock Steam Vents, and they play Wrenn and 6. Upticking Wrenn and 6 to 4, picking up their fetch land. We untap, Lotus Bloom's ticking down, draw Treasure Map, play Teferi, uptick him. I don't want to cast Seagate Restoration, but I will if I have to, which is why I'm holding it right now. So play Scalding Tarn, fetches an island. We untap. Lotus Blooms ticking down, one of them coming off suspend. We draw Selendi Vision. Play Treasure Map. Scry with Treasure Map. Jwari Disruption to the bottom. Uptick to Fairy. And then pass the turn. Opponent cycles a Shark Typhoon X1. They untap. Opponent plays an Abundant Growth. Gonna draw a card. They play a Scalding Tarn. They crack Scalding Tarn. They get an island and pick up Scalding Tarn. Then they play their own Teferi. And if they unsummon Lotus Bloom, we just Selendi Vision with the mana. This way they don't draw... Oh, I can't! I needed to do it in response to Teferi! No, and then I let it unsummon! And so my opponent got to draw... I did that the worst way possible. I should have Selendi Visioned in response to Teferi. But I did not. Now I don't get this Lotus Bloom. Okay. So, Lotus Bloom... Coming off suspend, stays in exile. Alright. So now, what do we do here? We can play Seagate Reborn, untapped, scry with Treasure Map, Seagate Restoration to the bottom, uptick to Fairy, then cast Selendi Vision. I can't believe I executed that in the worst possible way. We'll take Serum Visions, pass the turn. And we're hoping to draw either Selective Memory or Charbelcher. That's the plan right now. We don't want to downtick Teferi. We want to make our opponent have to, like, double bolt Teferi. They play Omnath. They play a fetch land. They gain life. They crack the fetch land. They're going to get mana. I really hope this isn't, like, Bring to Light for Valky. That would be annoying. Though, in theory, possible. Opponent peeks at her hand. Sees we have nothing. They uptick Wrenn and 6 to 7. They attack Teferi for 1. We untap. They have to discard. Counter upkeep. We are going to scry. Opt to the bottom. We basically, I think, have to hit Selective Memory this turn. Another Teferi. Bounce. Hang on. I don't have quite enough mana to do this. Do what I want to do anyway. Bounce Omnath. Third Teferi. Okay. Play a new one. Keep the new one. Uptick him. I could cast Serum Visions here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In theory, it's okay to do, so I'm going to. We draw an opt. Serum Visions, Thassa's Oracle. We don't really want to draw either of those. Especially not when we're holding an opt, so we could, like, Doomsday for... And by Doomsday, I mean Selective Memory. Pass the turn. I think the only way this goes wrong is if my opponent has a Lightning Bolt. Opponent plays Omnath, draws a card. If they have Fetch Land plus Explore or... what is that card? The other one that they can put a land into play. Growth Spiral. Then we lose to Fairy this turn, and that probably is the end, because my opponent could then force a negation to counter whatever we're going to do. They uptick Wrenn and 6. They play Scalding Tarn, gain life. They fetch with Scalding Tarn. And they play Yorion. I could flicker Omnath to draw another card, and Abundant Growth to draw another card. And then they attack Teferi for 1. Okay. Okay, we untap. We draw Lotus Bloom. So the very first thing we do is opt. Jwari Disruption to the bottom. We draw Jwari Disruption. We downtick Unsummoning Omnath. We find Selective Memory. But now we have 3... We don't have any additional draws, is the issue. So I have to play a new Teferi in order to draw any cards, unless I sack a treasure to Treasure Cove, but then I have no mana left. This is a bit tough. What do we do? And if I play Teferi and uptick, he's gonna die during combat. Jwari Disruption doesn't help us at all, so we can just play it out. We can play a new Talisman of Progress. Okay. Pass the turn. Teferi definitely dies. 100%. So we're going to save this one and force our opponent to use whatever counter spells they're holding, if any, on that Teferi before we try and do anything else. And this way, even if we have no cantrips for redraw, we can Selective Memory, then Treasure Cove, sack a treasure token to draw Thassa's Oracle and try and win that way. Man, you know, life would be easier if I didn't punt constantly. I would be way better at Magic. So opponent goes to combat. They attack Teferi, attack us. We go down to 9. Teferi down. The only concern is they ult Renin 6 and then just bolt us 3 times with Retrace. But there's nothing we can do about that. Okay, they emblem Renin 6. They play a land. And then they pass. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. That's actually how much we need, so we might not even have enough to win by drawing with Treasure Cove. We basically have to hope our opponent doesn't have counter magic or only has 1 piece for Teferi. They discard Omnath, we draw, opt. Okay. Well, here goes nothing. Play Teferi. If it resolves, we win. Archmage's Charm to counter, and presumably they can retrace. We don't even have enough mana anyway to win. Oh, we're a mana short. Yep, okay. Well, I messed up around them playing Teferi, and then I was playing on my back foot since. So we'll play Mystical Disputes and an Echoing Truth, and we gotta take out 4 cards for this. So we're gonna take out 2 opts and 2 Serum Visions. And we're going to try it like this. Alright, I would like to play first. We have a lot of dig, but no real payoff. We do have a Jwari Disruption, and one we can cast on a turn our opponent would have Teferi, so I'm going to keep this hand. I will start Seagate Reborn, paying 3 life, because I do want to opt, and suspend Lotus Bloom. Pass the turn. I'm going to make them think I have Mystical Dispute or something crazy like that. Maybe they can try and play around it some. Opponent plays a Snow-Covered Island. They are now passing. So we opt. Serum Visions on top. Since my opponent didn't start with ramp, they can't play Teferi on turn 2. We draw Selective Memory, which is great. Play Serum Visions. We draw Mind Stone, Force of Negation, and Charbelcher. Well, I wouldn't mind having Charbelcher as a backup way to win here. Play Bayin Coast. Pass the turn. Next turn we can play Seagate Restoration and Mind Stone, and then have 2 mana for Disruption. Opponent plays a Forest. If they have Growth Spiral into Teferi, that's gross, because it means there's not really anything I can do about that. Play Seagate Reborn. Then play Mind Stone. Okay, pass the turn. Leave up Jwari Disruption. They have Ice Fang Quaddle. Okay, that doesn't matter. The only thing we lose to is like Force of Negation, really. Opponent untaps. We want them to cast Teferi, not have Force, and then have us Disruption it. They attack us for 1. We go to 13. Our opponent plays a Field of Ruin, then passes. We untap. Lotus Bloom coming off suspend. Cast Lotus Bloom. It resolves. Then we draw Teferi. Pretty sure we just go for it. Pay for Mana Leak. Resolve Charbelcher. play Selectively, pass the turn. Cryptic doesn't work. They'd have to have Teferi bounce. Awesome. Oh, man. I thought for sure we were toast. Okay, no adjustments, run it back. This is way too slow. This does work in theory because we do have protection from Teferi. So I'm gonna put back Treasure Map. Okay. Opponent starts Misty Rainforest, crack Misty Rainforest for a forest, Abundant Growth to draw a card. We untap, draw Selective Memory, play Selectively, suspend Bloom, pass the turn. So opponent untaps, they play a Scalding Tarn, we untap, Lotus Bloom's ticking down, we draw Selectively Vision, play Selectively, pass the turn. I think basically the only thing we would Mystically Dispute is Teferi. They shock Hollowed Fountain, so this is probably a Growth Spiral or a Ice Fang Quaddle, and it is an Ice Fang Quaddle. Okay. They draw a card, opponent untaps, they shock Steam Vents, they go to combat, they attack for 1. We take 1, go to 19. Opponent passes. We're going to save Opt for the actual, like, combo. We draw Mind Stone, which I really want to play, and if it was a Talisman, I think I would risk it, but I can't, because if my opponent does play Teferi on their turn, we get denied all of this mana. The Nightmare scenario is my opponent has blue land, Teferi, Mystical Dispute, or Spell Pierce. Opponent Archmage's Charm to draw. They untap, or Teferi Force. Opponent plays a tap land and is passing. They attack us for 1. We'll go down to 18. Alright, we untap. Lotus Bloom coming off suspend. So cast Lotus Bloom. Opponent debates countering Lotus Bloom, changes their mind, and then does it anyway. So Mystical Dispute, Mana Leak. Okay, Lotus Bloom resolves. Lotus Bloom resolves. We draw Serum Visions. So sack for blue. Float blue, Selective Memory. I think that may have been my opponent's only interaction. Nope, they have Force. There's nothing we can do about that. They pitched Jace the Mind Sculptor. Alright. Pass the turn. Well, Force was one of the things we were worried about. Opponent opts. They untap. Draw a card. Oh, I should not be auto-yielded. I should not be auto-yielded because my opponent has Archmage's Charm and could try to steal a Lotus Bloom, at which point I need to crack it and opt. We're probably losing in that case anyway, but it's still correct to not let my opponent have it. Alright, my opponent attempts to Cryptic Command, bounce, and draw. So we do have to crack Lotus here. We're gonna opt. We get it to Teferi, but I think we put Teferi back. Draw Bayin Veil. Okay. So now we need to start playing Mana Rocks and lands. Opponent attacks for 1. We could have picked up Bloom and resuspended it, but probably in that time my opponent would draw more action anyway. We're going to play Skyclave Basilica first because we do want white land in case we do draw Teferi. Play Mind Stone. Pass the turn. We just need to get up to 7 mana, I think it is, to win. Selective Memory, Cantrip, plus Thassa's Oracle left in the deck. Opponent plays a Renin 6. Upticks. They're going to attack us for 1. They played a Misty. We draw Force. So, play Bayin Coast. Do I just cast Selective Memory here and leave Thassa's Oracle on top of my deck? I can't cast Force and Thassa's Oracle, unfortunately. It's still probably worth doing. Alright, opponent had the Mystical Dispute. It was better to do it then than to, I think, wait for my opponent to draw more interaction. After how game 1 went, I didn't imagine them having that many counter spells, but... Alright, I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright, round 4, here we go. I would like to play first. Well, we have selective memory. We have several lands, several cantrips, and a Jwari disruption. I think this is worth keeping. It's a little bit slow. Alright, so we're going to start with Selundi Isle. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. It's Tron! They mulled to 4, so hopefully we get him. Let's go ahead and cast Serum Visions. We draw another Jwari disruption. We do not need this many cantrips. Play Bain Coast, pass the turn. They're gonna have Tron. We untap and draw a Mind Stone. I wish this was the blue untapped land. I'm gonna play Jwari Ruins and pass, leaving up Jwari Disruption. So hopefully we can counter whatever it is they're gonna play here. Hopefully it's not Karn Great Creator. If it's Karn Liberated, we can Force Spike it. Okay, they play Urza's Tower. Does my opponent not have anything they could do? We untap and draw Lotus Bloom. How does this go wrong? If I play Amaria's Call in Selective Memory, leaving just Thassa's Oracle in the deck, my opponent can, in theory, play a tower, cast Ulamog, exile 2 blue lands. Then we're left with a blue and a white, and we can't cast Thassa's Oracle. I could play Mind Stone, play Amaria's Call untapped, or tapped, leave up Force Spike, wait 1 turn, and I guess that makes it slightly safer. My opponent mulliganed low, though. What are the odds that they have tower? And can I get around that by just keeping, or by putting a land in the deck as well as Thassa's Oracle? I think I have to wait 1 turn. Play Amaria Shattered Skyclave. Play Mind Stone. Pass the turn. Because if you have 2 cards in deck, you can control what you draw with Opt. But I'm going to turn off auto yields. I'm going to suspend Lotus Bloom as well. There's no reason not to, really, I guess. And the only reason that I'm trying to play around Ulamog is because Ulamog is one of those things that we would just lose to the first time it attacks. Okay. So we're going to leave up Force Spike and see if that makes a difference. Opponent plays Scavenger Grounds. Okay, it's Eldrazi Tron, so we should be safe. They go to combat. They hit us for 5. We go to 15. We untap, Lotus Bloom, ticking down. We get a Talisman of Progress. So play Talisman. And then Selective Memory. I'm going to leave in a Teferi and... Oh, opponent has Warping Whale. Okay. Well, I guess that's what's happening. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw, they go to combat, they hit us for 5, take us to 10. They play an Eldrazi Temple, 6 mana, Endbringer, Walking Ballista on 3. Okay. So Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw another Mind Stone, cast Serum Visions. We get a Charbelcher. It's probably too late because I don't think we can survive. I mean, these 2 cards go to the bottom. If I got a Skyclave Cleric, maybe I survive. I mean, Selective Memory doesn't do it either because I just don't have enough mana now. Do I? Yeah, no, I don't have enough mana. Opt again. Charbelcher to the bottom. And Teferi doesn't do anything either. Because I can play Teferi and I can unsummon Ballista. They can ping Teferi to kill him, ping us once, then pick up Ballista and cast it enough to be lethal. Because they have more than 8 mana. And if I bounce Reality Smasher, it has haste. Okay. Alright, that Warping Whale killed us. That is unfortunate. I guess we need to bring in the paths. Just do the same cantrip cuts. I always do. Try it like this. We'll play first. We got some cantrips, some lands. I think I'm going to mulligan. I mean, this has potential higher upside, so we can try keeping. I'm going to put back a Charbelcher because we probably don't need to. Start Bain Coast, pass the turn. The real nightmare scenario is that my opponent powers out like a Karn Great Creator, which is the Karn they're going to be running. They're not going to be playing Karn Liberated. They start Eldrazi Temple. We draw Jwari Disruption. Play Maria, Shattered Skyclave, and I think I gotta go Talisman of Progress here. If I draw an untapped land, I can play Charbelcher next turn. Okay, we were really concerned about Thought-Knot Seer, so if this is just Matter Reshaper, it's not a big deal. We untap and draw Lotus Bloom. Suspend Lotus Bloom. Play Jwari Disruption. Or Jwari Isle. Then play Treasure Map. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Plays a tower. They have 4 mana now. Okay, we're getting Thought-Knot Seared. They should probably take Selective Memory, because that's the combo they're going to have the least interaction for. There's always the chance that, like, we could play Charbelcher, and then they... Alright. They take Charbelcher. Scry, Force of Negation to the bottom. Untap. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw another Lotus Bloom. Suspend it. Cast Selective Memory. And I'm just going to exile everything except Thassa's Oracle. If they have Chalice and they can put Chalice on 2, then, you know, that's the breaks, whatever. I have to make sure I highlight absolutely everything. So I'm going to be here a while I'm exiling things. This is an excellent time to remind you that if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you should do so, especially if you like this card. And feel free to join our Discord. There's a link in the description where you can join and talk to other people like me and those that you see in the Twitch chat if you ever watch the stream VODs. A lot of fun. We do a lot of brewing. Got some user events planned up for, relatively soon. We just need a few more people who play Moto. So if you play Moto and you're interested in playing maybe in a jank tournament or something, then I highly recommend the Discord. Now that the shameless self-plug is out of the way, return to exiling cards. I honestly thought it would last a little bit longer. Oh, well, reminder, I do stream on Twitch. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes a little bit earlier. And generally play some jank modern when I do. My goodness, we're still not done. I guess, no, leaving a Teferian would be better. We're just going to leave Thassa's Oracle. The only concern, I guess, would be Chalice on 2 or Karn Great Creator plus Tron. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Opponent plays Karn. We untap. Lotus Bloom's ticking down, but we don't need them. Draw Thassa's Oracle. Play Thassa's Oracle. Win the game. Luckily that worked out for us. And we'll just run it back for game 3. We're holding Thassa's Oracle, which is actually a big danger, because if I get Thought-Knot Seared and they take Thassa's Oracle, we have to win with Charbelcher, which they can interact with more easily. So we're going to mulligan. This hand I think I will keep. And I'm going to put back probably Serum Visions. Well, no, I'm going to put back Opt. Opponent starts Eldrazi Temple, then passes. We untap, draw Selective Memory, suspend Lotus Bloom, play Bayene Coast, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an Eldrazi Temple. Is this the legendary turn 2 Thought-Knot? Why would it be anything else? Alright, we get Thought-Knot Seared. Probably take Selective Memory, because why wouldn't you? Yep. Alright, we untap. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw Serum Visions. Cast Serum Visions. We draw Selendi Vision. Jwari Disruption on top. I don't really think I want to draw any of these. And I'm going to play Skyclave Basilica, because that's what my opponent knows about. If I have to force, I'll force pitching Serum Visions. Opponent plays an Urza's Power Plant. This is probably a Reality Smasher. Yep. Consider our reality smashed. We take 9. We untap. Lotus Bloom ticking down to 1. Draw another Selendi Vision. Well, I cannot bolt myself to cast Selendi Vision. So play Selendi Isle. Cast Serum Visions. Basically hoping for... not that. We're taking 9. Next turn. We gotta put both of these to the bottom and hope our opponent doesn't have another Reality Smasher. And then we have to top deck. There's nothing we can top deck to win in one turn. I definitely missequenced here. I'm just not exactly sure how, but I know I played this wrong. So if you know how I played this wrong, post about it in the comments below. All right. Well, I think either of those 1-2s we could have won, so we could be as high as like 3-1 right now, but... Alright, I will see you all in round 5. Alrighty, round 5, here we go. I would like to play first. Yeah, this seems reasonable, we'll keep. So we'll start Bayin Coast and suspend Lotus Bloom, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Mishra's Bauble, cracks it. Plays a Polluted Delta, cracks it. Gets a Watery Grave untapped, plays another Bauble, cracks it, then passes. Opponent draws 2 cards, Lotus Bloom ticks down for us. We draw Force of Negation, so bolt ourself to play Seagate Reborn. And then, I think we go Treasure Map here. Start scrying. Unless our opponent, of course, goes Stubborn Denial, at which point we're not going to do that. Alright, opponent untaps. Back up to 7 cards. Thoughtseize. Sure. We could Force a Negation this, but I don't think it's worth it. They take Serum Visions. They shock Blood Crypt. Then pass. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw Seagate Restoration. Play Mind Stone. Pass the turn. Gonna hold Seagate Restoration in hand. Opponent cycles Street Wraith, plays a Steam Vents untapped, and casts Death Shadow. Alright. We untap. Lotus Bloom coming off Suspend. Cast Lotus Bloom. It resolves. We draw Solundi Vision. Play Talisman. Pass the turn. I'm gonna bolt myself for Seagate Reborn. Because we do want to cast Solundi Vision here. Opponent stops themselves. I guess we'll try and hold Force of Negation for Teamer Battle Rage. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks us for 8. We go down to 6. Then they pass. Cast Solundi Vision. Opponent casts Koligon's Command. I mean, do we need to counter it? I know we need to crack this for blue, but I don't know if we need this Force of Negation. Discard Force. Solundi Vision. So I could take Amaria's Call and have an untapped white source, but we already have one. I think we just take Serum Visions. Okay. Untap. We draw Teferi, Time Raveler. Cast Serum Visions. Draw Solundi Vision. Mind Stone to the bottom. Amaria's Call to the bottom. Play Teferi. Unsummon Death Shadow. We get Charbelcher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Play Solundi Isle. Now, if we untap and draw an untapped land, and we are at above 3 life, we win! Dicks. Alright. Opponent replays Death Shadow. We untap. Draw Selective Memory, but unfortunately are down one too many mana, and we needed to be able to cycle with Teferi. So that is a concession. So versus this deck, we are very obviously bringing in Leyline of Sanctity. We'll cut a bunch of cantrips, and then... Man, what else do we cut? Because I feel like we should probably have some number of Path or maybe Mystical Dispute to help protect ourselves. I think because my opponent is an attrition-based deck, I'm going to play Mystical Disputes in place of Force of Negation, because I don't want to be discarding multiple cards to counter a spell when we need to be keeping as many cards in hand as possible, and their cards remove cards from our hand. Lots of mana, nothing to do. That's a mulligan. Man, there's just no way we ever cast Teferi or have it matter, I think. So we're going to go to 5. We're hoping for a Leyline of Sanctity. Yeah, I think we're still hoping for a Leyline of Sanctity. Okay, we'll keep 4. So we have to put back 3. So what are we keeping? We're obviously keeping Leyline. Could probably put back the cantrips. And I'm going to keep the land over Dispute. Start Leyline. Start Blue Land. Lotus Bloom Suspend. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Mishra's Bauble. Targets themselves. Plays Blue to Delta. Shocks. They untap. Or we untap. They draw a card. Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw Charbelcher. Alright. In theory, we have a way to win. If we draw 2 lands in a row and the second one is an untapped land, we win. Alternatively, if next turn we draw a mana rock and then we draw an untapped land, that also works. Opponent fetches with Bloodstained Mire, gets a Blood Crypt. We untap, Lotus Bloom ticking down. We draw Treasure Map. Play Treasure Map. Stubborn Denial, we can't pay for it. They untap, cycle Street Wraith. Play a Scalding Tarn, crack Scalding Tarn. They get a Watery Grave untapped. They play Death Shadow, and they play Death Shadow. And they're playing a Delve threat? Yep. We untap, Lotus Bloom coming off Suspend, cast Lotus Bloom, draw Seagate Restoration, play Seagate Reborn, not paying life. A lot has to go right for this to work, but play Charbelcher. We have to somehow not die, and our opponent can't have Kolaghan's Command. Which they probably do. They're representing 13 damage if they have a Battle Rage, if they have a Bolt. Actually, if they have only a Bolt, we would live at 1. Wow! I did not expect us to get that victory. Cool. And my opponent, I was obviously talking about my opponent bolting themselves, not bolting me, because we had Leyline. Alright, yeah. We'll keep. Start a Leyline. Opponent starts Bauble, targets himself, plays a Bloodstained Mire, fetches, shocks. We untap, they draw a card. We draw Teferi, so play Bayin Coast, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They Thoughtseize themselves, revealing their hand, discarding Collective Brutality, then lose life. Interesting. We draw a Mystical Dispute, so play Emeria Shattered Skyclave, into a Mind Stone, pass the turn. Opponent does nothing. We draw Serum Visions, bolt ourselves for Seagate Reborn, play Teferi, Mystical Dispute backup, uptick Teferi, pass the turn. So now they can't play their big Delve threat, because we have a unsummon to deal with it. Opponent plays a Death's Shadow, or after playing a Scalding Tarn they just drew. Don't know what else is in their hand, or what the 5th card is, I mean. We untap, we draw Treasure Map, play... There's no way to safely play Selective Memory, because my opponent could have a Mystical Dispute, at least to my knowledge. Unsummon Death Shadow, see what we draw. Okay, Emeria's Shattered Skyclave, play that. Selective Memory. Get rid of everything except Oracle. And we got there! We won 2 rounds! We could have won 3 and up to 4. I think this deck is way better than I thought it was, but I think it's still got some serious weaknesses. Weakness number 1, your opponent can Thoughtseize your lands. As if Thoughtseize needed a reason to be better. That is weakness number 1. Weakness number 2, you auto-lose to mill 99% of the time. Because if they surgically extract Charbelcher and or Selective Memory, like what are you going to do? You're going to have to hold on to Thassa's Oracle, and then they literally just have to hold up a counterspell, and they have hard counterspells to beat you. Yeah, this deck is better than I thought it would be, though. I really was like, oh, you know, haha, somebody 5-0'd, got lucky, memed with it, but it feels like it's got game. Round 1 was a great example of that. Round 1, we just basically unimpeded, comboed off both times, tried to play intelligently. This deck sort of reminds me of Ad Nauseam. It's very different, but hear me out for a second. This deck wants to get to 6-7 mana, cast 2 to 3 spells, win the game on the spot. It plays Teferi Time Raveler, which does an excellent job of protecting this deck, versus the, like, Yorion Snow deck. We went through, like, all 3 Teferis, and only when we didn't have a Teferi on the board did we lose. And so, like, sticking one of those early can be imperative, absolutely shuts off most control decks' ways to answer this. Thassa's Oracle, the victory being an enters the battlefield trigger over something like Lab Man is huge, absolutely enormous. There were a few times where it was like, man, I just wish we had slightly more untapped lands in the deck. And I really think this deck could get away with safely playing 1 island. And my logic behind that is, if you're playing 1 island, you haven't drawn it yet, you can Selective Memory, exile your whole deck except Island Thassa's Oracle, and then you draw a step for turn, and then you use one of your onboard cantrips. I almost want to put Street Wraith in this deck over like Opt, because there were a bunch of times where it was like we were just a mana short. We could Selective Memory, we get to put Thassa's Oracle in our deck, but then we can't cast a cantrip, we can't cycle a Mind Stone, we can't activate Treasure Cove, and still have enough mana left over. So really, we want some kind of free cantrip. Playing a single basic in this list would also allow you to get around a Field of Ruin activation or a Ghost Quarter. It wouldn't be a Strip Mine or worse. It does slightly throw off the math. Like, I can't Selective Memory for Teferi Thassa's Oracle unless I have my basic. But, I mean, I think that's fine. If you have Street Wraiths in the deck and you have those as your free cycle, as opposed to something like Opt, you could then change the math to make the deck better. But I think that's all I've got for right now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few have been earlier. And I hope to see you there. I hope to see you guys in the Discord. Links in the description below. And I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings, and thanks for watching. I've been very happy. You guys have been giving me an overwhelming amount of positive support in the comments below, despite my recent incredible blunders, shall we put it, on camera. And it's very reassuring, extremely validating to have other people tell me that, you know, I'm entertaining and I'm still informative. And I think it's one thing to be entertaining. It's one thing to be informative / educational and a niche subject that you know a lot about. But to be considered both by some people and one or the other by others is really an incredible feat to me. So I really appreciate the positive support. And I want you to know that you guys are all wonderful human beings. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!